How did you discover
And
Kingfish?
well, Kingfish was actually pretty well known in the blues world, at least in the very um small, we all talk to each other blues world. He had been performing since he was a fairly young teenager on little small stages at the King Biscuit Festival in Arkansas and at clubs in Clarksdale. So some blues tourists had seen him. And there was a lot of buzz because he was clearly very good, even at 14 and 15 years old. His debut album, just called Kingfish, which we released in 2019, was recorded when he was still 18. And his new album, 662, was recorded when he was 21. So the word was out about him. I used to go see him sometimes on stages with 10 or 20 people in the audience. And he was clearly a very talented guitar player, but at that time he didn't have original material and he was playing too many notes. And he would agree with me that he was playing too many notes. And it's guitar player youth disease. And some people get over it and some people don't. But one of my expressions is about musicians I really like is they know what the important notes are. And it took him, he learned what the important notes were very young, but still, not at 14, what you'd expect. I mean, I didn't understand any of that stuff when I was 14. Why should he? But he matured very quickly. So I had seen him. There was a lot of buzz around him. He was also doing performances with a charity organization called United by Music, which is run by some friends of mine and brings together people who are either physically or mentally challenged. Some people, I mean, one of their best artists, one of their most talented artists, is a girl, well, a young woman who is in a wheelchair and will be for the rest of her life. And also, whatever her particular challenge is, she's the size of maybe a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old. She hasn't grown to the full size of a woman, and I guess she won't. So he's been performing with them as a sideman, accompanying these people who are often very talented, but who are never going to get a chance to express themselves as live performers or professional musicians because of the challenges they face. And he's doing that out of the goodness of his heart. And that told me a lot about him as well. So when I when Kingfish came to the label, and with these days he's probably our most successful artist, and with this new album is clearly going to be much more successful. It actually came to me as a finished master. I didn't produce the record or have any input in it. Tom Hambridge, the Grammy-winning producer who's worked with, amongst many people, Buddy Guy, produced it. Buddy played on it, and in fact, it's a little unclear to me what happened, but apparently behind the scenes, I think Buddy may have helped with the original financing of the recording. And he certainly lent his services for free because he's a mentor, because he sees Kingfish as walking in his footsteps, and he should. He's a huge influence. And so I was brought this record by Kingfish. By that time, had a professional manager and a lawyer, and it was a really, really tough, long negotiation. I knew I wanted the record, but boy, did they make it hard for me. And it wasn't Kingfish who did this. It was the people around him who he entrusted to take care of his business. And if I were in his shoes, I would say, okay, if they put the record company through the ringer, they did a good job. From my point of view, I felt like I went through the ringer.
So
he's a terrific guy to work with. I should also say about Kingfish, he's just, I would say, completely unspoiled by all of this fame that he's gotten. He's still just a regular guy. I still think of him as a kid, although he's 22 now. He's direct, and he's doesn't try to be slick or sophisticated. He grew up in a small town. He's proud of that. He gets on stage and he talks to you like you're in his living room.
yeah, the few times that I've had a chance to get to meet him and talk to him, I've definitely noticed that he's very humble.
He is, and he appreciates his roots very much. When I'm looking at artists for Alligator, I always want people who are proud of being part of the tradition, not necessarily who want to duplicate the tradition, but who feel like there are these giants behind them, and that they are trying to carry on the legacy of musicians who made timeless statements and created music that continues to move people, even if maybe they aren't on the face of the earth anymore. Now, I don't want artists who are going to do imitations of those people. And I don't want somebody who gets up and does a note for note Muddy Waters, because I saw Muddy Waters. And no matter how good you are, you're never going to beat him doing Muddy Waters. I want people who say, okay, Son House it was an inspiration for Muddy Waters, and Muddy Waters came to Chicago and plugged in and electrified the music and took that legacy of Son House and made it his own and made contemporary statements for an audience at that time. So I want musicians who are looking and saying, okay, B.B. King or Albert King or Freddie King or Sun Seals or any number of other musicians made important timeless statements for their era. Now, inspired by them, I want to do the same thing for my era.